Hey!
Hey, good job with the launch of Far Cry 5.
Yeah, it's gone great. The fans are loving it. We've sold lots of copies.
Yeah, that's great, but, we've got to start thinking about the future of the franchise.
Yeah, we'll get the team together. We'll start throwing around some ideas.
You've got a year. Have another game on my desk by next February. Bye!
It's time again for the most original game ever made. Craft supplies and fight for survival in the new post-apocalyptic open-world game, Far Cry New Dawn. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's Oliver, and did I ever tell you the definition of insanity? It's making the same game, over and over and over again, and expecting things to change. Yes, it's February, so it must be Far Cry, apparently. Ubisoft, don't steal that if you do, pay me. Ubisoft at this point have basically become their own genre. When you see their logo on a game, you know what you're going to get into. You're going to get a big detailed open world with a terrible story and plenty of mundane tasks to complete. Innovation is certainly not Ubisoft's strong suit. Before I get into New Dawn, I think it's important that you know my opinions on the Far Cry series as a whole. I thought Far Cry 2 was awesome, it was such a cool sandbox, and I still don't think anyone's pulled off Africa that well since. Far Cry 3 was great, and it's my favourite in the series. Far Cry 4 was basically Far Cry 3 with worse mission design, but it still managed to maintain that quality. Far Cry Primal was decent, it had a lot of things wrong with it, but I wouldn't go as far as to call it bad. Far Cry 5 was horrible. Aside from the good gunplay, pretty much everything else was terrible. And that brings us to Far Cry New Dawn, except for it's more like Old Dawn, because I've definitely played this before. Now, there were a lot of red flags when they first announced this game. First off, it was announced 2 months before the game came out, and also it was using the exact same map they used in Far Cry 5. This kind of told you that Ubisoft didn't really care and didn't bother to hype it up. What we have here is basically another Far Cry Primal situation, except from this time they actually told us they were using the same map from the last game. Far Cry New Dawn is, well, okay. It's basically just Far Cry 5, but they fixed some of my problems with it. The problem with New Dawn is that I can't justify its existence. It doesn't need to exist because it doesn't bring anything new to the table. Even before release, it was obvious that the game only exists because Ubisoft knew they could make it in a year. The cash grab is what it is. Before we start, I'd like to note that the game isn't full price. It's £38 in the UK and $40 in the US. That's another sign that Ubisoft just made the game because they could make a lot of money off it. So, go. Imagine someone took Far Cry 5's map, got a pink paintbrush and just smeared it all over the place. That's basically Far Cry New Dawn's open world. The game only shares about half of Far Cry 5's map due to the rest being covered in radiation preventing you from going there. Don't worry though, just like Far Cry 5, presentation is the strongest aspect of the game. Very few companies can make open worlds as well detailed as Ubisoft. I mean, you'd think they'd be good at it after doing it for 10 plus years. The woodland of Far Cry 5 is still just as well detailed and immersive as it was before, except maybe more so this time due to there not being a ridiculous amount of patrols around. The world has the emptiness you'd expect from a place that got blown to pieces, and honestly it fits the game well. The world is populated with lots of weird looking mutated wildlife, helping re-emphasize the world's not what it once was. Running through the fields and hearing the ambient sounds of leaves blowing in the wind and birds chirping in the background makes walking through the woodland strangely relaxing. Unlike most post-apocalyptic environments, Far Cry New Dawn is bursting with colour. The world feels alive. There are moments where you'll stop to admire the view. Seriously, the game looks like a painting at points, and it's pretty impressive how smoothly the game runs too. Ubisoft has never been bad at nailing that great atmosphere with their open world games, and they've definitely never been bad with sound design. Just like Far Cry 5, guns are loud and realistic. They have such a great weight to them, really helping with gunplay. Performances are always strong and the music is fantastic. The heavy techno music that is prominent in the Far Cry series is back and it still works just as well as it did, despite being the same map as Far Cry 5, and yes, it feels familiar. Locations you visited in the past have quite a lot of wear on them. Buildings you've seen before will have holes in and are covered in overgrown vegetation. I love how vehicles and bandit camps have taken this Mad Max sort of style. They're spray painted and have random bits of metal sticking out. Guns are put together with bits of scrap metal, and it's cool to see a scope made out of some old pipe. A lot like Far Cry 5 though, there aren't any memorable landmarks, every area looks the same which makes the game feel kind of repetitive. It doesn't help that the game shares the same map. This ruins New Dawn's chances of feeling like a standalone adventure. Thanks to the returning areas and characters, New Dawn feels like a DLC to Far Cry 5. Many assets and sounds are straight from the last game. New Dawn doesn't have anything memorable in it, even gameplay wise. There's nothing to distinguish it from Far Cry 5. The developer's creativity was obviously limited due to only having a year to develop the game, so if you play both titles back to back, there is a good chance you'll forget what's part of each game. It suffers from what Primal suffered from, which is the world has nothing unique to offer. Overall though, the presentation does its job pretty well. The world isn't exactly interesting to look at, but it's certainly damn beautiful. The story of Far Cry 5 was horrific. It was horribly paced, the tone was all wrong, and I wanted to shoot all the characters in the face. Sadly, Far Cry New Dawn repeats the same mistakes. As with all Ubisoft games, the story is atrocious. Set 17 years after the events of the last game where the antagonist Joseph Seed and his cult got nuked, you play as a silent character named the Captain who travels to Hope County to help the people there. When you get there, your train is blown up by the new evil faction, the Highwaymen, led by two stale villains, Mickey and Lou. After meeting up with the local settlers, you all band together to help build your new base, Prosperity, and drive the Highwaymen out of Hope County. Okay, where do I start? Every aspect of the writing is rather terrible or lazy. Actually, let's start with the beginning. This all happens very quickly. I understand you want to get me into the open world as fast as possible, and I agree, but there's no build up to any of this. These people I've just met who have been suffering for quite some time have now suddenly decided to start a rebellion all because I showed up. I mean, just watch how quickly they're convinced to do this.
Alright, guys. You know how to handle a gun. You know your way around this valley better than anybody.
So?
So? Sitting around moping isn't doing any good. Look, Rush was supposed to help us build someplace safe. Now, it's up to us. There are brave people here scattered around. We just have to find them.
Bring everyone together. Show them we can stand up to the Highwaymen.
Bitch, are you for real?
It's not realistic at all. Everyone is completely okay with waging a war against an enemy that's much more powerful than you. This brings me to my next issue. None of the characters are realistic. Just like Far Cry 5, every person you run into is so fucking annoying.
Oh, thank goodness! You're so nice! I'm Bean, creator of Wikibeania. You know, your one-stop shop for maps and intel. Wikibeania, just the tips! But here's the rub. Wikibeania is in danger. My key assets are all gone. Intel, maps, you name it. And now my business plan is missing too. But I know who gave me the shaft. My employee, Richard. He's got a real bad gambling habit, always playing crazy eights with those highwaymen and losing his pants. He must have hidden the plan somewhere for safekeeping, else they just take it from him. They're not very nice, or respectful. His usual gambling place isn't far from here. If you spook him, he'll run and lead you right to his hidey hole. I'm sure of it. I'd go, but I've got bad knees. And lungs. And eyes. Anyway, please get my business plan back. If you reach around my back now, I'll reach around yours later. That's a Wikibeania promise.
Every character is predictable and one-dimensional. They're all so unbelievably generic. Why should I care about saving anyone if I hate them all? Even in combat, your followers will just start screaming when they see an enemy and it's just like, god damn it, shut up! I just stuck with the dog for the rest of the game because he's cute and doesn't make a ridiculous amount of noise. Now, my other issue with Far Cry 5's story was the tone, and it also carries on into New Dawn. These games have a problem with not understanding how to make a serious story. Okay, Ubisoft, you can't go from mourning the death of someone, and then the next mission you're in a fight pit being cheered on by a bunch of maniacs. You have to make it clear what you want your player to feel. That's why no one can take your story seriously. How am I supposed to take the game seriously when I can impale someone with a shovel with a smiley face on it? In case you still don't believe me, the pre-order bonus is a unicorn bicycle with a mounted gun on it. It's difficult to take your story seriously if I'm riding into battle like a princess. Far Cry 2, 3 and 4 were serious games and they worked. Sure, you could do crazy stuff in them like ride an elephant, but it wasn't that immersion breaking. With the next game, because we know you're going to make one, you need to pick one or the other and stick to it. It's okay to have one or two side missions that are goofy, but nothing more. Another issue I have with the story is that you do everything. Most of the main missions in the game require you to recruit people out in the world and bring them back to your base. Some of these characters are returning faces from Far Cry 5, and let's be honest, There were no good characters in Far Cry 5, so it doesn't really matter. Once you do what they ask and recruit them, they disappear to somewhere in prosperity and you never see them again. Recruiting people feels like you're just ticking boxes rather than actually building your base and improving it. You don't get any unique rewards for any of these, which I think would fix the issue somewhat. Once again, it's time to talk about the Gordon Freeman effect. The main advantage of the first-person perspective is the ability to make the player feel like they're there. It is an easy way of doing immersion and is the reason a majority of horror games choose to be in first person. The Gordon Freeman effect amplifies this by having your main character not speak. The reason this worked in Half-Life was because Gordon Freeman is not a character and is alone for a majority of the time. This effect didn't work in Far Cry 5 and it doesn't work here because you're the focal point of the story. Every character interacts with you. This makes every conversation awkward and unrealistic. The moments it doesn't work the most are the cutscenes with the twins. The twins hurl insults at you and you just sort of sit there and take it. Oh boy, it's time to talk about what Far Cry is known for. Good villains. Or more like good villain, because out of the 8 they've made, only one of them was effective, that villain being Vaas. Do you want to know why Vaas was such an effective villain? It wasn't because he was crazy, it was because he was an asshole. He didn't kill people for fun, he did it because he was evil. He kidnapped your friends and tried to drown you. That, along with the excellent performance by Michael Mando, made you want to kill him, so when you finally did drive your blade through him, it was damn satisfying. The only Far Cry villain to come close to Vaas was Pagan Min. The opening scene for Far Cry 4 was effective. The problem was that Pagan Min only showed up for like 10 minutes in the game. He was barely in it. So here are the bullet points Ubisoft followed to create their villains because they still can't figure out why Vaas was so good. 1. They have to be crazy or sociopathic. 2. They have to stare into the camera a lot. And 3. They have to have some sort of irrational belief about what they are doing is right. This is what Ubisoft took from Vaas because that's what they think made him a good villain. They forget to make their villains generally dislikable. They don't realize that having the twins do absolutely nothing throughout the entire game makes me not care about them. Despite the fact that they have an entire army that could easily take down Prosperity, they don't do anything. When you recruit or save someone important, they'll call you and say something like, "Ah, damn you, we'll get you for that." They remind me of Blackbeard from Pirates of the Caribbean 4, where throughout the entire movie all he does is threaten people but not actually do anything. But wait, there's more. Joseph Seed's in the game to give more cryptic religious speeches that don't mean anything. All he does is waste your time just like the last game, except at least this time he doesn't kidnap you 70 times. So, other than the story being horrible, the world building is also pretty bad. There isn't really anything post-apocalyptic about it other than the Mad Max-like design. The world is very much alive. You go to Prosperity and everyone's doing fine, kids are playing and there's never any scare about food running low. There's plenty of ammunition and guns lying around, which doesn't really make any sense. I feel like you should have taken advantage of this setting you had. Just crank up the survival aspect a bit, make the world more deadly. Now everything I just said could be applied to any Ubisoft game. The company since Assassin's Creed 3, which came out in 2012, has never gotten the story right. It's almost like they refuse to try and improve it. Ubisoft, this is really killing your games. You're a multi-billion-dollar company. Hire some good writers, please. But Oliver, Assassin's Creed Odyssey had a good story. No, it didn't. It was horrible and was probably one of the worst stories they've ever made. Far Cry as a first-person shooter is great, it always has been. My only positive about Far Cry 5's gameplay was the gunplay. Due to New Dawn basically being a mod of the previous game, the shooting here is once again excellent. Thanks to the realistic sound of the weapons, engaging in firefights is chaotic and fun. Deciding to go guns blazing into an enemy outpost is thrilling and clearly the core of Far Cry's gameplay. But in case you hadn't noticed, every game that comes out nowadays has good shooting, so obviously you need to do a lot more to stand out. This is where New Dawn improves upon Far Cry 5. It doesn't entirely get it right, but there's more to it now. Let's start with the progression system. One of Far Cry 5's biggest issues was that the game gives you all the toys immediately. There is no sense of progression. This means that after about 5 hours, the game is going to start feeling old. There were no new enemies or challenges. Unlike the previous games in the series, they decided to scrap the skill tree where you earn upgrades through XP, for a new system where you complete small challenges to get perk points which allow you to purchase skills. The problem was that thanks to there being no new obstacles to encounter, skills didn't mean that much, plus they were much easier to obtain. Scrapping the XP system was a bad idea. That feeling of becoming stronger was lost in Far Cry 5. Far Cry New Dawn also includes this perk point system, but instead of just reverting back to the previous system to fix it, they decided to add this RPG-like system. It does work and in a way fixes that problem with progression, but you didn't need to go that far. You could have just simply added the XP system back in. Not only that, but overall the biggest issue with Far Cry 5's gameplay wasn't the progression system, it was the mission design. How do you think other first-person shooters get away with being good without having a big progression system? It's all mission design. Sadly, New Dawn repeats the same mistake. Every main and side mission is incredibly bland and unoriginal. It usually involves defending some area, killing some people, or an on-rail segment. Add that with the uninspired story and horrible characters and your missions start to feel like a chore. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Far Cry 3 had amazing missions, but at least I remember some of them. New Dawn features these side missions known as expeditions where you get on a helicopter to some location. In these missions you have to locate a package on these fairly big levels where once you grab it you have to run to the LZ and get out of there. While these missions are short and there isn't much to do, the game lets me do what I want. I have creative freedom on how I want to approach the situation. It's moments like these where New Dawn shines the brightest. Even when the game has what it seems to be a unique mission, it gives you no freedom and it sucks. For example, there is a mission where you purposely put yourself in prison so you can find a way to kill the warden, but any attempt I made to go off on my own, the game would fail me. There is no creativity with the missions, and while progression is important, it won't save an uninspired game. So how does the progression system work? Well, enemies now have set levels going from 1 to 4. You have to craft weapons with materials that you find out in the world, and these weapons also have a set level. So if you're using a level 1 weapon against a level 4 enemy, you're gonna get destroyed. Man, I wish I could craft weapons with just some scrap metal and some tape. This was something that was desperately needed in Far Cry 5, and it does work here. You will want to get the most powerful stuff, which gives the player a goal and does add back in that feeling of getting more powerful. But you can't craft the most powerful stuff right out of the gate. In order to unlock the ability to craft the most powerful weapons, you'll need to upgrade prosperity. You can't just upgrade prosperity with basic materials, you'll have to upgrade it with the most precious resource in the game, ethanol. You obtain ethanol by doing the optional outposts around the world. After you complete an outpost, you'll have the option to scavenge it, which will repopulate the outpost with tougher enemies and more alarms, allowing you to obtain even more ethanol. This is actually a great feature, it makes outposts feel rewarding and makes the game not feel like a grind. Every system complements each other, adding this layer of depth Far Cry 5 needed. The different sections of prosperity that you need to upgrade will grant you different benefits. One section might allow you to access better vehicles and another will make your followers more powerful. Outposts, like most Far Cry games, are the best part of the game. That pattern of tagging enemies from a distance and sneaking in slowly, taking out enemies is still satisfying. It also helps that they've added the brutal stealth kills back into the game. It's also good that they got rid of the stupid bullet sponge enemies for Far Cry 5, making firefights more realistic. Like most Far Cry games, the bow is still your best friend and is still a bit too powerful. One of my biggest problems with Far Cry 5's combat was the AI. The AI was absolutely brain dead and their pathfinding was completely fucked. In New Dawn there is a significant improvement, although I would still not call it perfect. However, the follower AI is still completely fucked. They still run around like morons, get blown up all the time and get you spotted when trying to sneak. The treasure hunts are back from Far Cry 5, but once again they're not fun or rewarding. Looking for crafting materials out in the world is made pointless, as completing one expedition, which takes about 10 minutes, gives you plenty of materials to craft what you want. This ruins your motivation to explore and ruins the idea of scavenging for supplies to survive. This leads me to my next issue. Far Cry was always a series praised on its approach to the survival aspect. Ubisoft managed to make a good survival game without any of the annoying shit like a hunger bar. The survival aspect of Far Cry has been completely gutted in New Dawn, just like it was in Far Cry 5. Hunting is gone, collecting herbs is gone, and so are those gruesome healing animations. Hunting was such a great aspect of the previous Far Cry games. In order to get something like a bigger weapon holster, you had to go find the animal you needed, skin it, and craft it. It made that upgrade more rewarding as you went out of your way to go get it. It also adds this sense of realism. It's a shame too, because Far Cry New Dawn does feature these new mutated animals, but there's no reason to attack them. They're pretty deadly too. Most of them could two-shot you with ease on the hardest difficulty. There's this dumbass boat mission in the main story where you go slowly down a river and you have Joseph Seed whispering a bunch of nonsense in your ear the whole time. It goes on for like 40 minutes and is a huge waste of time. In fact, any mission with Joseph is a waste of time. Ubisoft like to pretend they're being artsy and are like, ooh, look at how weird and cryptic this is. And I'm like, no Ubisoft, I don't care, let me shoot more things. Completing Far Cry New Dawn certainly isn't difficult, but it's not exactly fun either. I did enjoy doing the outposts and the expeditions on the hardest difficulties, but that's about it. Completing every side mission feels like a chore, and there aren't really that many of them. The amount of side stuff in the game is pretty small compared to Far Cry 5, even if you count the collectibles. Speaking of which, yes, I got them all and it wasn't actually that bad. The two collectibles in the game are these MP3 players that add songs to the car's radio, and these pictures that you have to line up with the actual place, which doesn't really do anything. Like most games, it's just padding. Far Cry New Dawn is a cash grab through and through. The only good content it has is the outposts and expeditions, and there really aren't that many of them. It's a 5.5. Even though it's not full price, I still can't recommend it. There's nothing new here. With most yearly franchises, there's always something that you can use to justify buying the next one, but with Far Cry, not only does it have nothing new in it, but it only seems to get worse. You might as well play Far Cry 3 or 4 again, because even though you've already played them, you're still going to have a better time. All Far Cry New Dawn can offer you is fun shooting, but every game has fun shooting, so just play something else. I like your progression system, but it's not a reason to buy the game. The game isn't long either, it took me about 10 hours to do everything. There are also microtransactions in the game, which just literally allow you to skip everything and get the best gear straight away, but there's absolutely no reason to buy them. The game isn't grindy at all, so there's no point. Ubisoft, you need to find a way to evolve the franchise. Or you can just stop making them. You know, franchises end eventually. Just don't buy it, is what I'm saying. I don't have... There's no reason to buy it. Just play Far Cry 3 or 4 again. It amazes me that the game's getting 7s and 8s. It's like, what? The game is literally just shoot. Every game is shoot. So, until next time, where I tear my way through feudal Japan.